Good evening and welcome to this regular meeting of the Planning Board for the City of Birmingham for Wednesday, August 12th, 2026. Could we please call the roll?
Klein.
Present.
Scott Klein.
I'm present.
Robin Boyle.
Here.
Stuart Jeffries. David Larson.
Here. Present.
Daniel Scher.
Here.
Janelle Wicklevoice.
Here.
Brian Williams.
Present.
Duncan Curry.
That was you.
Missy Mermet.
Duncan.
Here. Breaking up.
You broke up a little bit there, Laura. Duncan Curry is here.
Yeah. So is.
So is Ms. Ramin.
Thank you.
And for the record tonight, with no Mr. Jeffries, Mr. Curry will be the voting member tonight. Thank you. Let's move forward to review and approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of July 8th. Any comments, corrections? Uncanny. I would entertain a motion. Please. Mr. Larson.
I'll move to approve.
Motion, Mr. Larson, to approve the minutes of July 8th. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Curry. Any conversation at the board? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion unanimous. Welcome, everybody. Good to see folks here out tonight on a beautiful evening here in Birmingham. Tonight we have a public hearing related to the short-term rental ordinance and the changes that are being proposed at this time. There will be an opportunity for the public to speak during that public hearing. I will call for public comment. If you're here, you can come forward. If you're at home watching on Zoom, you can use the raise your hand function, and I will go back and forth as best to make sure everybody gets a chance. With that, Mr. Dupuy, are there any changes to the agenda as posted?
There haven't been any changes.
Fantastic. So let's dive right in. We have a short-term rental ordinance, a public hearing, so I'm about to open the public hearing on changes to the short-term rental ordinance. Mr. Dupuy.
All right, thanks. And some new faces. I'm Nick Dupuy. I'm the planning director for the city of Birmingham. I'll run through this report. The nature of a public hearing demands that I be a little bit more detailed, so bear with me. I may even read a few things verbatim just to highlight the importance of a few bits of the timeline, but also a few sections of the ordinance. So bear with me, but if I see some hands during, I'll try to notice and stop.
That's fine.
So this process started on April 27th when the City Commission placed a 6-month moratorium on providing any rental license in the city of Birmingham for 30 days or less. That 6-month moratorium runs through about November. At that same meeting, in the same resolution, is where we received direction. The direction being to review the current general and zoning ordinances and determine if all rental premises should be regulated and controlled by the Birmingham zoning ordinance, including all necessary regulations to ensure the health, safety, and welfare of Birmingham residents. The directive also included a desire to review how best to protect the character and peace of the city's neighborhoods by determining if the city should, at a minimum, regulate or consider the following as a part of the zoning ordinance. Establish a minimum rental occupancy of 30 days, which you'll find we did. Evaluate the impact of rental housing density, which we discussed. Provide key contacts online for community complaints, which is an internal function. Enforcing behavior and nuisance rules, which is an internal function we've been working very hard at, actually. And establishing inspection and enforcement protocols, which is an internal function that we are working through. Overall, the City Commission discussed this beyond or including that April 27th date about 9 times in some fashion, some more substantial than others. Most of the discussions revolved around a short-term rental report that we issued to the City Commission at every meeting. That report consisted of updates from the building department in terms of enforcements, activities, all related to rentals, the police department for any calls specific to, in this case, short-term rentals, and myself in the planning department updating them on the process here that we've been going through at the planning board. At the planning board, we've had 3 meetings, one of which included a joint meeting with the City Commission where we discussed this topic. The last meeting being on July 8th, where you all moved to set a public hearing to discuss the final ordinance amendments to several sections of our zoning ordinance. you added some exclusions to the D4 and MX zones. I'm going to start explaining some of the ordinance and how it's changed a little bit from the July 8th meeting now, and explaining why what you see in the ordinance is related to the B4 zoning district and not the D4 zoning district directly. First of all, the D4 downtown overlay zoning district is an overlay zoning district. In this case, the D4 zoning district, it's form-based and it's very heavy on architecture and the layout of buildings. In particular, when you get to subsection C of Article 3, the downtown overlay, it states that uses shall be limited to those allowed in each underlying zoning district unless otherwise specifically provided for herein. What I'm suggesting to you is the underlying zoning district associated with the D4 zoning district is the B4 business residential zone. I included a map that hopefully made it a little more clear. There are a couple of variations here that we can talk through, but for the most part, the footprint is the same. In internal discussions, both with the planning team as well as, let me zoom in a little bit, it's a little small, as well as legal, we discussed the distinction here between your motion and what you're seeing today, and we are very comfortable moving forward with this proposal. We think the discussion that you had was very geography-centric in this central location. Some of the comments about the other types of uses, like hotels, are also related to the B4 zoning district, which is why we took this approach. With that, if I may, I'll go through some of the zoning standards that we developed. First and foremost, the city has in Article 2, district intent, permitted uses, and special uses for every zoning district in the city, from public property to transitional, commercial, mixed-use, residential, etc. The sections that received amendments are sections 2.03 through 2.45. Only the district intent, permitted uses, and special uses sections for each zoning district. Each of those zoning districts contains lists that look like this. Our strategy was to add a new permitted use land use category of rental unit, strike an existing accessory permitted use of renting of rooms, and add a residential amenities accessory permitted use. Those are, with very few exceptions, the only changes that you will see in Article 2 of the zoning ordinance. I wanted to be very open that in some of these, I also took the opportunity to fix non-substantive, I'll call them typos even, in little sections at the end. So you might see bold in other places, and forgive me, I don't have a good example for you. Gosh, maybe I'll find one in my notes here, but just typos and spelling type things that I noticed while I was combing through it. Otherwise, those are the only changes. The second section that was changed was Article 3, Section 3.07, which is the Triangle Overlay District. Unlike the Downtown Overlay District, the Triangle Overlay District is very prescriptive in terms of land use. They have a land use matrix that outlines all the land uses permitted in each zoning district. So the strategy here was to add rental unit, same terminology as a permitted use in all of the zoning districts here, and residential amenities as an accessory permitted use. Yes?
Mr. Dupuy, just for clarity, for the public's sake, you say you have stricken rental of rooms. I want to make it clear that we have not eliminated that use. It is being incorporated into the rental unit category. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's
So we're not
redundant.
taking away a right that someone had to rent a room.
It's redundant.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Just want to make that
that's why,
clear, that
yes.
it's still
Yeah.
part of the ordinance. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. So the other thing I wanted to make sure I pointed out is that there's an asterisk next to each of these. Much like the Downtown Overlay District, the Triangle Overlay District also has underlying zoning districts. Typically, the underlying zoning districts are the ones that contain the use-specific standards. So by adding the asterisk and including this new language, I'll just read it, use-specific standards of each underlying zoning district apply. We then bring in the new restrictions that we've developed as a part of this rental ordinance. Moving forward one article to Article 4, as I mentioned last time, this is the parking standards, by the way. As I mentioned last time, the parking standards for rental units existed in Chapter 22 of the City Code. Parking standards are very much a zoning function, so it felt natural to just strike them from that chapter and bring them over into the zoning ordinance. They were brought over verbatim. So the language you see here, 2 parking spaces for the first bedroom and 1 parking space for each additional bedroom, etc., is exactly as it read in the City Code. I know we talked about that a little bit at the last meeting, but to me it felt like a fine enough standard to not need to change.
What are residential amenities?
Ma'am,
We'll
I
get to
promise
that.
you, we're going to show you all of the definitions,
Okay.
and then when we're
Yep.
done with the report, we will have a public comment where everyone is allowed to come up and provide input. But I do promise, all of those definitions will be shown on the screen.
Yep, absolutely. So I'm moving on now to Article 5, which is where the use-specific standards of each zoning district that contain them are located. Use-specific standards, generally speaking, are standards or special rules that apply to a specific activity or structure in each zoning district. So the intent here was to add use-specific standards for 2 of the 2 new land use categories that we added, both rental unit and residential amenities. I did read through this last time. I don't know that I need to read through it again today. Rental units, the high-level review here is that we reinforce that you need to get licensed. Number 2, this is where we insert the 30-day minimum requirement that we decided on. In sections 3 and 4, successive short stays and advertising and platform listings, this is our attempt to kind of head off some of what we discovered, I believe, to be the 2 most common loopholes or workarounds to ordinances like these. In G, residential amenities, we split it off. This was different than the last review. Previously, it was a subsection of advertising and platform listings. In this version, I split it off as its own use-specific standard. As its own accessory permitted use, it made more sense that way. Also, what we made sure to incorporate here is that they may not be advertised, listed, or rented separately from a dwelling unit. Previously, it had said rental unit, and we wanted to make sure that we didn't create any unintentional loopholes, frankly. These sections and these 2 new standards for rental units and residential amenities are exactly the same in every use-specific standard for every district except the B4 Business Residential Zoning District, where we removed the 30-day minimum as you concluded, as well as the MX Mixed Use Zoning District as you requested. So I will scroll to one that's R6. Sorry, there's a lot of pages here, y'all. Forgive me. Oh, man. 01, K, E. Almost there. So here is B4. You'll notice that subsections 2 and 3, as were in previous sections, the 30-day and the successive short stay section, have been removed. This is exactly how it reads in the MX zoning district. Everything else, as I mentioned, just to reiterate, is the same as all other zoning districts. Finally, let's get to it. Oh, excuse me, not finally, second to last. We, of course, added a bunch of new definitions to Article 9 of the zoning ordinance.
There you go.
I'm not sure, Chair Klein, I read them last time, but perhaps it's worthwhile to read them all again this time, if you'll indulge me, especially since there's
It's
some
important for the public to understand what these terms are.
some questions in the audience. Zoom in a little bit too, so you can read along. We added a definition for hosted rental, the rental of a dwelling unit or any portion thereof for compensation, where the property owner remains physically present and resides on the premises throughout the duration of the guest's occupancy. Long-term rental, the rental of a dwelling unit or any portion thereof for a compensation with the purpose of providing residential occupancy for a period of 180 consecutive days or more. Medium-term rental, the rental of a dwelling unit or any portion thereof for compensation with the purpose of providing residential occupancy for a period of not less than 30 consecutive days and not more than 179 consecutive days. Owner-occupied rental, the rental of a dwelling unit or any portion thereof for compensation where the dwelling unit constitutes the property owner's primary residence, which is the dwelling unit where the person resides for more than 185 days out of any calendar year, and which is documented by voter registration, a driver's license, or a state-issued identification card showing that address. Rental unit, a dwelling unit or any portion thereof that is offered, leased, licensed, or otherwise made available for residential occupancy by one or more persons in exchange for compensation, regardless of the duration of occupancy. Residential amenities, accessory features, facilities, structures, areas, and services that are intended primarily for the use, enjoyment, convenience, or benefit of the owner and are subordinate to the residential use. Residential amenities may include, or but not limited to, fitness facilities, swimming pools, playgrounds, sport courts, gardens, kitchens, off-street parking, and similar features. Finally, short-term rental, the rental of a dwelling unit or any portion thereof for compensation with the purpose of providing transient lodging for a period of less than 30 consecutive days. Now, I think it's worth explaining here, you may be ready to ask me the same question, that there are a lot of definitions here that you didn't see in the above sections, in Article 2, 5, or any other ones. The story behind that is at this body, we felt that it was important and frankly a little harmless to define these different types of uses that or terms that we encountered in our research, in our findings, in our public engagement. Part of it is to be thorough. Part of it is, should anything change or any new approaches come from an ordinance study, a future ordinance study, we don't have to redo the same thing. We've got them defined, and we can use these terms accordingly. That would conclude the zoning ordinance amendments. It's worth at least showing you all and those in attendance that based on the City Commission's resolution and direction to review the current general and zoning ordinances, we also took a look at Chapter 22, Article 6, Division 4, which is where the license for rented leased premises regulations exist. I noted a couple of them already, but the short version is the tactic here was to, one, align terms so that they're consistent across codes and ordinances, and two, to relocate the parking section. So you'll see here it's struck. All of this was considered in the zoning ordinance. There's no other changes proposed to that. It is not, although it's unusual for us to recommend changes to the broader city code, because we were requested and because this is only a recommendation, the City Commission will have the final approval powers, if you will. It is not a problem for us to be recommending changes to the code. All that being said, we made it clear throughout this whole process that it's going to be important to develop findings and have a clear statement, I suppose, as we recommend this to the City Commission. I provided some notes in here for you about what I feel we've landed on. I feel we've thoroughly evaluated the potential benefits and the impacts of regulating short-term rentals within our community to determine an appropriate framework to try and balance private property rights, neighborhood compatibility, economic development, and the protection of public health, safety, and welfare, which was a key part of the City Commission direction. We also included, I would suggest, is a very thorough review of existing local conditions here, but also other municipalities in the state. We also heard a lot of public input. We also reviewed a lot of best practices that we found related to specifically short-term rental or broader rental regulations. What we decided is that we identified several potential impacts associated with the short-term rental format of rental units, transient rentals specifically, increased noise. We've heard a lot about parking congestion. We heard some notes about refuse management, property maintenance, the potential for commercial activity to be happening in a residential neighborhood. We also found that there's potential enforcement challenges. There might be life safety compliance issues. There are cumulative effects of a high concentration of short-term rentals on neighborhood stability, but also the availability of long-term housing. So what I suggest is that I think this body, as well as the City Commission, frankly, could conclude that the adoption of these suggested ordinance amendments are appropriate to establish a clear operating standard, protect that valuable neighborhood character that we have here, provide a lot more accountability, and to provide some certainty for property owners, residents, and visitors. So I did concoct the motion language for you that provides a recommendation to approve, emphasis on recommendation. I'll highlight here that we are just the recommending body. I don't mean it, just isn't the right word. We are a recommending body. We've done a lot of great work here, of course. This will go to the City Commission for final adoption, approval, what have you, whatever happens there. I have included 6 of the 6 areas in which we're recommending approval to. And of course, as always, I'm happy to answer any questions, simple or detailed.
Thank you, Mr. Dupuy. As this is a public hearing, no real comment at this point, Board, but are there any questions that need answering before we go to the public? All right, seeing none, thank you, Mr. Dupuy. I will now open it for public comment. Whether you are at home on Zoom, you can use the raise your hand function in the middle center console. If you are here in the room, please feel free to come forward to either of the microphones. I will call on you, and you can give me your name, your place of residence, and then provide your brief comment on the ordinance amendment that is being proposed before us. So at this point, if anyone would like to provide any other additional comment on the proposed ordinance, please come forward and do so. Please, by all means. Oh, go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Karen Wilson, and I am here on behalf of the Greater Metropolitan Association of Realtors. I am an active and licensed realtor with App Properties Christie's International in their Birmingham office, and I am a member of GMAR's Government Relations Committee. We understand the concerns that have been raised about short-term rentals and understand the effort that has gone into trying to address those concerns before the moratorium comes to an end. Our concern is not with creating reasonable regulations. It is with making a hasty decision with a limited amount of information to pass a policy that affects all property owners, your community members, and visitors. Before making this decision, we believe we should first make sure we understand the problem we are trying to solve. We have heard a lot of conjectures about the potential impacts of short-term rentals, but we do not yet have enough information to determine how widespread those impacts actually are. We should also be mindful of the people who are following the rules and operating responsibly. There are property owners who use short-term rentals to make use of their property, help offset the cost of ownership, or provide an option for visitors who want to visit our wonderful city. A policy should distinguish between responsible property owners and those who may actually be creating problems. We believe there is an opportunity to take a better approach rather than place a ban on almost the entire city. We can collect data, identify where legitimate problems exist, and then narrow the regulations already in place to address those problems directly. That approach would give us community members appropriate protections while also recognizing the rights of responsible property owners. For those reasons, GMAR respectfully asks the board not to move forward with such a broad ban at this time. Instead, we encourage you to take the time to gather the data needed to understand the issue and develop a better policy. And I believe I missed in representing where I live, which is on Bloomfield Court in Birmingham.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate
you.
your comments. Any other members of the public care to come forward and provide any comment at this time? I don't see anybody online right now raising their hands. Please, sir, welcome.
I'm David Wynn, 1457 East Lincoln, where the shooting occurred. Respectfully, to people wanting to make money Public safety comes first and should be the first consideration. The shooting that occurred, you could actually see the school from the house. I think the exceptions that you are making to this in the mixed-use district, and I think it's B4 now, is a mistake. I think you will see a problem in those areas because you're making that exception. I don't know the justification for it. I think you should have one before you go to the commission, what that justification is for those exceptions, because I've been to the commission meetings, and basically there are no exceptions in their mind. So I understand you have to bring it, they have to discuss it, they'll have to approve it in the end, but I don't see a reason for exempting those areas. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other comments from the public? Welcome.
Eve Pickman, 2355 Pembroke. Missed a few of these commission meetings, Planning Commission, missed a few City Commission meetings. I found out about this meeting by Googling it. It was not promoted anywhere on social media. It was not published in the Eagle. Meanwhile, there's a notification in there right now from the Eagle for something going on in Royal Oak. So that's kind of a massive bit of oversight if you're having a public hearing. I know I've been to other meetings here where you've said, gee, no one comes to zoning planning meetings. Perhaps we should promote them. That's my first thought. Something that seems to be overlooked in what Mr. Dupuy proposed is for the units that are going to remain either in the mixed-use areas or for that 30 to 179-day window. There's no addressing where the property owner or property manager lives within a reasonable distance of these properties. I know there are a few that the property management company is based out of Ann Arbor. I know there are a few in Birmingham that are owned by folks in Rochester and Royal Oak, neither of which is in a 10-mile radius of the properties. The situation with the shooting, the situation with the pool party, those are all, I'm going to call absentee property owners or property managers. And that is, I think, a piece of the puzzle that is missing. And a significant concern. I did a little homework of my own since the last meeting. I happened to have business over at Merrillwood, and I popped into the building manager's office. They said, what's your policy here about short-term rentals? Lady informs me 9 years ago when they took over the property, they got rid of the short-term rentals. They have complaints enough from 222. They were having problems with loud parties, people coming and going, trash in the elevators, trash in the hallways. They now have instituted a 6-month minimum rental of a unit in their building, even if it's a sublet. And they put a surcharge on those units to cover the additional, I'm going to call it maintenance for lack of a better term. I'm just curious what homework was done, especially in areas like the Rail District, where you have similar use, where you've got retail or restaurant on the main floor and possibly even on the second floor with apartments and condominiums above. I know you've done a lot of homework, but that was a 2-second pop in an office, get an answer over there. As for the complaint that people want to come and visit and stay, we have lovely hotels here. We have lovely extended stay hotels in Auburn Hills and Troy, just minutes away. We also have University of Michigan, who has announced that they will be completing their medical center in spring of '27, which would open in a tremendous market for rental property for doctors, medical professionals, traveling nurses who tend to be on a 6-month contract to rent houses in Birmingham. So the whole argument that we're shutting people out, we're missing a pretty significant market and a more stable market by making homes available for that 6-month plus window for medium-term or long-term rentals. So I just wanted to make those points. And my last question is, when is the City Commission having their planning session, and how will that be promoted?
Thank you. So, Mr. Dupuy, just real quickly, Michigan state requirements related to public notice for public hearings such as this. Can you just explain the city's policy on that and confirm that we properly noticed per legal requirements?
So in reverse order, confirmed, we did legally notice. The requirement is that we need to publish in a publication of local circulation, in this case, the Oakland Press. We also, more for the meeting itself than the public hearing, but we need to post notices in City Hall, a minimum of 18 hours. So all those notices were posted on Friday, so well in advance. So yes, but no point taken.
That's his paywall.
Ma'am, please. So from a legal standpoint, we've met the burden. I believe the public has brought forth some items that perhaps the city manager might consider in the future for better exposure beyond the legal requirements. And of course, that's an administrative function of your office and the city managers. So I would just suggest that you take those suggestions and discuss it.
Constructive criticism accepted.
Yeah. Perfect. Anyone else from the public care to comment? Ma'am, welcome.
Hi, thank you. My name is Kelly Kozlowski. I'm a Birmingham resident. I live on East Lincoln. Regarding a potential mixed-use exception for short-term rentals, I think it's important to keep in mind that those sorts of boundary lines within the community exist on zoning maps. There's no real, if you're walking the neighborhood, it's not as though, oh, I stepped across the line and saw the sign and now I know I'm here and I was there. As someone who lives very close to the rail district, nearly in it, there are all kinds of safety issues already. On Eaton, you've got bike lane traffic there that a lot of car traffic doesn't know what to do with. You've got people trying to turn out of businesses on that road with limited visibility because of street parking. I've almost been hit several times just traveling Eaton in my car, on my bike. And when you've got people who are visiting the community who aren't familiar with the sorts of nuances of traffic patterns and foot traffic in the community, that presents a potential risk and real safety concern. So I can appreciate that we're seemingly really protective of, these particular, especially commercially focused districts being able to provide short-term rentals. I'm not sure at what point we decided that there was a deficit of that. I'd love to see, for instance, a city planning document with a strategy around tourism that includes any kind of data suggesting that we don't have enough options for people when they come to visit the city. So if that's a real concern, maybe that's part of the homework as well, if it hasn't already been considered. To the earlier comment about legitimate safety concerns, ma'am, all due respect, I live 6 houses down from where the shooting took place, 35 bullet casings in the street, on the street that my husband regularly rides his bike, I regularly jog. And we watched the next morning as a car dropped someone off to rifle around in backyards and hop fences and eventually emerge with what we were told by police later was a gun that they had come to recover from the day before. So again, that happened 6 houses down on the street. We saw them across the street from our house, and they had hopped fences to other streets in the community. So when we're thinking about these lines, the reality is that the activity that short-term rentals enable in communities, and we've seen examples of this not just in Birmingham, but multiple communities in Oakland County since, that do escalate to the level of gun violence and in some cases death. That I don't understand why we're being so careful to protect the ability for people to continue to offer short-term rentals in the community. I'd be very curious about the level of due diligence and homework and thoughtful and lengthy analysis that took place to decide that we should have this in the first place. I've heard a lot of comments about this is hasty in multiple meetings, not just this one. We're not spending enough time, you're rushing us, we don't have enough time. And the reality is, none of this, to my knowledge, none of this kind of process took place at the beginning to say, hey, Birmingham residents, would you like this in our community? Would you like it, to look this way? We didn't even previously differentiate between short and long-term rentals in ordinance language. So all due respect, I can appreciate it feels fast. For those of us who've lived in the community for more than a decade, it sort of feels like something showed up in our community. We were never asked if we wanted it to begin with, and now people are fighting tooth and nail to protect others' rights to maintain it. And that just seems very backward to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that care to comment? Sure, please come forward.
Good evening. My name is Murat Muftari, 10-plus year resident on Villa Road. A family coming to pick up their newborn daughter, choosing Birmingham for a few weeks, not only for the neighborhood experience, but for the walkable city that it is, to bring, a family that brought economic value to the local businesses and city. A doctor bringing his 2 kids on a work trip to enjoy Birmingham for 2 weeks instead of traveling alone and staying at a hotel. A lawyer and her husband coming to visit their family, but wanting a cozy place in Birmingham. I'm a disabled veteran that depends on this type of income. These families that I mentioned were real examples that recently, have stayed at my home, and they brought real economic impact and value to the city. They proactively chose Birmingham, and they didn't want to stay at a hotel for different reasons. We can't penalize everyone for a couple bad actors. I don't know if the data is there, but I'm assuming that those short-term rentals were even less, were probably a 2 or 3 day type of rental. When I saw a 30-day definition of a short-term rental, how many of those rentals were a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks? I think the definition of short-term rental and the data kind of analysis that needs to happen within that, with some of these bad scenarios that have happened, I haven't seen any of the reports that dug into that kind of data. And then I'll challenge the council to answer these questions. How many documented short-term rentals have complaints, police calls, bylaw violations, safety incidents relative to long-term rentals? Right? I mean, I have a long-term renter neighbor who violates all these things, and she's still there. She's a more continuous nuisance to our neighborhood than any short-term rental I've experienced. What empirical evidence shows that short-term rentals broadly are causing this identified problem? How many short-term rentals have generated complaints versus how many have operated without incident? I'm sure we can dig that data up. How many hotels have had incidents in Birmingham that required police calls relative to short-term rentals? What would the economic impact of this be overall for the city of Birmingham and its business owners? Not having these answers shows that we haven't really conducted a true data-driven analysis. Why don't we look for real practical solutions that balance data and facts and find ways to remove these type of incidents that I agree with the neighbors here are an issue. But, let's really dig into why those incidents happened, what the scenario was for that particular rental, and try to bring this data forward so that we can look to push out these outlier scenarios, but also find a balanced approach. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, and thank you for your service, sir. No, one time, please. It's not a debate. Anyone else care to comment? Sir, welcome.
Good evening. Thank you. My name is Noah, 535 Wallace. I've operated short-term rentals for quite a while. I've done it in a number of cities. I think that all these people here who have said their experience are totally valid. I think that the need for regulation is real. It's very important. And I am sorry to these people who have gone through that. I also think it's really important to be thoughtful and equitable in how you think about doing this. It's been done in dozens of cities, not just across the United States, but in Michigan specifically. And what I want to see is that I want this to be done with a data-driven approach like the gentleman just stated. There are a lot of questions that remain unanswered. And I also want to make sure that the city does so in a way where it's kind of fair for the best actors, because there are really good reasons why people don't want to stay in a hotel. There are really good reasons why a family wants to stay together but can't in a 400 square foot hotel room. And by the way, there are a few hotels in Birmingham that are very expensive. So if you have a family with 2-3 kids and you have to rent 2-3 hotel rooms, it's a lot of money. And we're not exactly in an environment where people can spend frivolously and still enjoy the walkable city that we have here and that I, as a resident, enjoy. I'd also like to mention that as I live in this neighborhood, I care that my neighbors are treating me with respect, my wife with respect, my little golden doodle with respect. And I also wouldn't want to be living in a neighborhood where there was no thoughtful regulation, thoughtful management about noise ordinances, parking, an anti-party policy. Like, these are all things that genuinely endanger people, and I agree need to be handled professionally. And the one thing that I didn't see in the ordinance was kind of the concept of, for these good actors, for people who are doing it the right way and who have been operating legally, how are they going to be treated? Will there be a non-conforming use, a grandfathering status included? This is something that I saw that Ann Arbor did. They went through a very similar process, and I want to make sure that I at least recommend that their ordinance be studied and ideally copied, because I think they did a really good job of respecting the public safety. That is, making sure that bad actors who have consistent noise violations, who get police calls, who have real problems with their properties, just like, as the gentleman right there said, there are plenty of property owners who rent long-term and who are negligent. I don't want there to be negligent landlords or property owners at all. I want there to be responsible ones. And so I would ask that this process be revised to include consideration in an equitable manner for those people who have put real time, real effort, and real money into making sure that when they do host people in this beautiful city, that they do so respectfully and in consideration of their neighbors, because we are part of the neighborhood. And it's our responsibility to be the best neighbors, not just good neighbors, but the best neighbors. I do that. I know that there's a lot of people in Birmingham who do that. And this 30-night minimum, while I understand it, punishes those people. And I respectfully ask that you consider changing the ordinance to include a legal non-conforming use status for folks who have been operating legally, respectfully, doing things the right way, pulling permits if there's changes to their properties, being licensed, having inspectors come in if there's requested changes, making those changes quickly, and seeing to it that they are great neighbors and great responsible owners of property in this city. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any final comments from the public? Seeing none online, I will then close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for conversation and deliberation. Anyone care to start things off? All right, well, I guess I will to maybe get the ball going. Mr. Dupuy, I think you did an excellent job, not just tonight, but in general over the course of our study, which has been multiple meetings here, as well as meetings that the City Commission held where public comment were obtained to identify the potential issues with short-term rentals, identify the pros and the cons, and allow us to come to the finding of fact that you've presented to us. I think it's fair to say, Mr. Dupuy, would you mind putting up the map that you included that shows the the B4 and MX while I speak? Thank you. I think it's fair to say that this board has reviewed those findings of facts, and I have come to the conclusion, at least, and I won't speak for everybody, I have come to the conclusion that short-term rentals, before we get into what length that is, short-term rentals is identified by the Michigan Court of Appeals, are commercial uses or transient uses, and that those sort of uses are incongruent and, in fact, perhaps detrimental to the neighborhood fabric of residential neighborhoods. If you look at this map and you see all that gray, those are all of the residential neighborhoods of the city of Birmingham. This ordinance would not allow short-term rentals in any of them. The only areas currently that short-term rentals have not been identified or restricted are the blue and the orange, the two commercial mixed-use districts of this community. And I, for one, know that I believe my opinion would be that we should extend it to those districts. However, far more study in those districts needs to be done. Make no mistake, I'm not making an exception tonight. I'm simply admitting that I don't know the answer for those two areas because it's far too complex on the timeline we have. But I do know that the 90 to 95% of the rest of this community deserves to be heard now as opposed to waiting another 3, 4, 6 months as we figure out those nuances. So I am in favor of the proposal as it is tonight, even though I will say, no ordinance is perfect. I will say that I do wish we had been able to come to conclusion on these two areas, but I think we've done a good job on the rest of the ordinance, and I think we've handled the problem that has been presented to this community fairly well. I think we've added the residential amenity category, which will hopefully be yet another explicit marker that the renting of pools or sports courts or other things is not allowed unless you're renting the entire unit. And then lastly, with regard to the timing, I don't know whether 30 days or 2 weeks is the right spot. I will tell you 2 weeks strikes me as too easy to game the system. Strikes me as very easy to game the system. And these are difficult decisions, but I feel comfortable that 30 days is one that is recognized by both the Court of Appeals as well as numerous other communities in our state. And I think it would behoove us to follow the standards that have been set and the definitions that have been set by others as well. I'm comfortable with where we're at here. I think, Mr. Dupuy, you've done a nice job in helping us get there. I'm ready to move forward, but I'd love to hear more debate at the board. Mr. Williams.
So the chairman and I voted no on the proposed resolution because I too felt that at the time we'd call it D4 and MX exclusions were not appropriate. I was a resident for several years in the MX area. I think I'm the only one on the board that was. It's a neighborhood, and I didn't feel at the time, and I still feel it shouldn't be excluded. On the other hand, knowing the press as it is, I'm not going to oppose the resolution as proposed because my comments will be undoubtedly misconstrued as being opposed to a short-term rental ban. So I'm going to vote yes, but I do not believe it is appropriate as to the two exclusions. And in particular, the MX area in which I lived is it does have commercial, but it's pretty intense residential. Most of the noise occurs behind the beer garden, but notwithstanding that,
I'm sorry.
I don't want to be in the position of encouraging short-term rentals in the MX district, which is pretty residential. In the area downtown, we do have a lot of residential, but it is not as consistently intense as the certain portions in the MX district. So I'm going to vote yes, because I think it's important to protect the neighborhoods. Notwithstanding some of the comments I've heard tonight, has not persuaded me to change my view that the neighborhoods need to be protected.
Anyone else care to provide any comment, deliberation, questions? Mr. Scher?
This is it's a difficult and complicated problem. And data of the sort that various people, both opposed to and in support of the ordinance, have mentioned, it's hard to come by. Much of what both sides of the argument have discussed are really, it's really a retrospective problem. We'll know what the data is once we've done something and evaluate it. These ordinances aren't necessarily static and don't necessarily have to remain in place exactly as they're first adopted for years and years. If the experience of the next few years, shows that the ordinance can be improved, then it's something that, the planning board and the city commission can certainly look at. But what is utterly clear is the outpouring, particularly early in the process, of community sentiment about the public safety and public nuisance problems associated with short-term rentals and the number of complaints that are associated with them in various neighborhoods. And when I, speaking for myself, look at the risk profile, I guess that in a community like Birmingham, which is kind of unusual in the area for both the intensity of its commercial downtown and the quality of its residential neighborhoods, the potential harm associated with the gun violence, with some of the other things we've heard about, outweighs some of the limitation on the economic freedom of folks who, I think, the large majority of us, purchased or rented homes in residential areas for the quality of the residential areas rather than the economic opportunity generated by sort of turning our own property into private equity. And I think that both the B4, pardon me, I've got something in my eye, both the B4 and the MX district are different from purely residential districts. They have significant commercial components, and I think the risk profile there is different. As with the chairman, I'm not sure that 30 days is the right number. I think that one of the issues is at what economic point does somebody who wants to rent a short-term rental for the kind of activity that's caused a problem, become worth it. So if it's, being simplistic, if you want to have a party on a Saturday, renting it for 4 days probably pays. I mean, by party, I mean commercial party where you charge admission. 4 days makes, economic sense. 30 days clearly doesn't. Where on the rest of that continuum, I don't know that I have the perfect answer. Nor do I think that there's any data investigation that's going to give us that answer. So given what's happened, I'm comfortable with the ordinance. I'm, prepared to recommend it to the city commission. And if there's nobody else who wants to speak, I'm prepared to make a motion, but I would ask for the indulgence just so I can go wash my eye out sometime. I'm sorry.
Why don't you go do that while we see if anyone else on the board would like to provide any comment. Mr. Boyle.
Yes, I'd like to make 3 points, and I greatly appreciate the chairman's request for the data. We were asked specifically to review the ordinances as regarding short-term rentals because of a negative impact on residential areas. The map shows that we are sending forward a modification to the zoning that clearly protects our neighborhoods. That's what we were asked to do. Point 1. Point 2, the minute I heard what was in the request from the City Commission to us, the term, this three-letter word worried me, and that is all. The word all was forcing us to consider all our neighborhoods at the drop of a hat, without subsequent research, without careful thought, without review, which we have started to do. And I'm pleased that the city staff brought forward quite a lot of information at the beginning. And I think we have protected the neighborhoods, but at the same time realized that there are variation and variety in our city that we can, at least at this stage in the review of our zoning ordinances as regarding rentals, presents it to us. We're not immediately jumping into the word all. Third point, this particular issue is extremely complicated because it covers large geographies in the world, but the impacts are extremely granular. They affect my neighbour, the person next door to me, the person across the street, as to what happens in my house. It's a very difficult issue to deal with. I discovered there's an organization called AirDNA. And AirDNA is an organization that's collecting information on this very topic across the globe, driven by the American situation. Scale is enormous, massive scale. But through that, they're starting to learn pieces of information which you can, of course, select what you want to hear. And I understand that. I understand that when you collect data like this, you're sort of picking things that sort of supports your own viewpoint. So I don't want to go too far into it, but I do want to reference one study that was done, which you might want to look up. It was done in Boulder, Colorado. Boulder is interesting. It's a university town. It's also a large tourist town, but it's also a growing town for government employment and the like. They did a 30-month study of short-term rentals and looked at the rental market citywide. They discovered, not surprisingly, as the gentleman said about half an hour ago, that there was a greater incidence of reporting to the police from traditional rental property than there was short-term rental. And if you think about it, that's sort of logical. A, Airbnb, VRBO, Booking.com, the main data sources police it because the owners and the renters know about one another. Secondly, there is more likelihood that people living in long-term rentals are going to be doing more things, having more parties, having more parking, having more noise. And therefore, it's not surprising that short-term rentals, as compared to traditional renting, doesn't provide the same level of incidence. I'm picking up a data point, but it's there. It is emerging. And all I'm saying is that that map tells me that we're doing the right thing to protect the neighbourhoods in Detroit, but not closing the doors to this.
In Birmingham.
Sorry, in Birmingham. What did I say there?
Said Detroit.
Yeah, I can't help it.
Habits, both habits.
I think we've done the right job, and I fully support the motion that's going to be coming forward tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Boyce.
And I just wanted to add, first let me say I missed the July meeting where we discussed this in more detail. And for anyone who didn't see it, I would recommend you go back like I did and watch the video, because it was one of the most complete and thorough discussions with some of the best material presented by staff, and that I've ever heard, read, or seen when it comes to short-term rentals. So I urge everyone to watch it if you haven't. It's on the city website. I think this board and staff did an excellent job of going through the data that we have, looking at what other communities are doing, and trying to make decisions to keep the city safe, but also recognizing the importance of what short-term rentals do bring to communities. And I know some people disagree, particularly when you live down the street from a shooting, and that was horrific. The swimming pool situation was not a short-term rental situation. They broke the law completely. That is not something that was ever permitted, and I know that's getting mixed up in this a little bit. But I do see the value of short-term rentals, and I'm happy with this proposal and the ability to give us a little bit more time to study these commercial districts that also have housing within them. So I also plan to support this tonight, and just want to commend staff and the hard work that they did to bring us all of this information, because this has been a really difficult task for everyone.
Mr. Williams?
Yeah, I just point out the one thing we haven't discussed tonight, and it's not pertinent to the motion, but it is pertinent to the overall issue, is we discussed at the joint meeting, at least I believe there was some discussion and some commentary that the city itself was going to have to, for lack of a better phrase, staff up to enforce these ordinances. I reiterate that. It's clear to me that we don't have the dedicated resources on hand to enforce the existing ordinance, let alone the proposed ordinance. So I am sure that our planning director will convey those comments, and if any commissioner is listening, I stand by my comments that we need to increase the amount of resources that we have available to enforce the provisions of the ordinance, not only from the standpoint of dealing with people who violate the ordinance, but protecting those who don't.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. One last comment before we go to Mr. Scher here. Someone brought up, and I failed to mention it, someone brought up how it seems like this was something we didn't ask for and it just came here. And no one asked us whether we wanted them, and then they showed up and the like. I appreciate the sentiment. I would just say that after 30 years of working in the zoning world, ordinances are almost always reactive. They're very rarely proactive. And that's because the world changes so quickly, particularly in the world of development, in land development, and in technology. Who would have thought of autonomous vehicles? Who would have thought of renting out your home on an app? Who would have thought of renting your pool on an app? All of these things, the little scooters that are all over urban downtowns that you can buy with rent with a credit card. Ordinances are consistently trying to keep up with what is going on, and that's not just Birmingham, that's all communities. So here is our attempt to try and keep up with what has been thrust upon us, if you will, by this change in technology over the last few years, last 10, 15 years in the case of rentals. But I think it's important for folks that maybe don't deal with ordinances on a daily basis to understand that that's what ordinances are all about. That we're constantly trying to react to what's new and in front of us without overreacting. So with that, Mr. Scher, did you have any further points or comments?
I have a motion.
Let's go for it.
So this is a motion to recommend amendments to the Birmingham zoning ordinance. At the direction of the City Commission, the Planning Board has evaluated whether it is advisable to regulate short-term rentals within the city, and if so, in what manner. In doing so, the Planning Board has reviewed local conditions, the facts and expert opinions gathered by the Planning Department, such as the regulatory approaches of peer communities, best planning practices regarding short-term rentals, and has evaluated the considerable public comment presented to the Planning Board. The Planning Board finds that there are numerous adverse impacts of short-term transient rentals on residentially zoned areas. These include increased noise, parking and traffic congestion, increased refuse management, increased nuisance behavior, public endangerment, property maintenance issues that affect both short-term renters and neighborhood residents, and ordinance compliance burdens for various cities' departments, as well as intrusive commercial activity, all of which negatively affect the character of established residential neighborhoods. The cumulative effects of transient short-term rentals also adversely affect neighborhood stability and the availability of long-term housing. Based on these findings, and balancing private property rights, preservation of the character of residentially zoned neighborhoods, the protection of public health, safety, and welfare, the Planning Board concludes that amendments to the zoning ordinance are necessary and appropriate to accommodate appropriate rental operations within some zoning districts, minimize negative impacts of rental activity on residential neighborhoods within regulated districts, and protect the public interest. Specifically, the Planning Board recommends the City Commission approve the following amendments to the Birmingham zoning ordinance and to the City Code. Number 1, Article 2, Sections 2.03 to 2.45, to modify the permitted uses to add, quote, rental unit to the list of residential permitted uses. to remove, quote, renting of rooms, close quote, from the list of accessory permitted uses, and to add, quote, residential amenities, close quote, to the list of accessory permitted uses. Second, Article 3, Section 3.07, permitted uses and special uses, to add rental unit and residential amenities land use categories to the Triangle Overlay District Land Use Matrix. 3, Article 4, Section 4.46, PK02, off-street parking spaces required, Table A, to add required off-street parking for rental unit land use category. Article 5, Sections 5.02 to 5.15, to add use-specific standards for rental unit and to remove use-specific standards for renting of rooms. 5th, Article 9, Section 9.02, to add definitions for rental unit, short-term rental, medium-term rental, long-term rental, owner-occupied rental, hosted rental, and residential amenities. 6, Part 2 of the City Code, Chapter 22, Community Development Regulations, Article 6, Property Maintenance Code, to modify Division 4, license for rented lease premises, to remove on-street parking requirements with the intent of relocating parking requirements to the zoning ordinance, and to modify terminology to be consistent with the zoning ordinance, all as more particularly shown in the attachment.
Motion, Mr. Scher. Do we have a second?
I support the motion.
Second by Ms. Boyce. Conversation on the motion at the board. Mr. Dupuy, before we do that.
Forgive me, may I offer a friendly amendment? Very minor.
Yes?
In Mr. Scher's fourth bullet point, where he outlined Article 5, adding use-specific standards for a rental unit, if you'd be willing to add "and residential amenity" to that, it was left off in this particular section.
That's fine.
That jumped
I
out
would
at me.
accept that.
That jumped out at me. Ms. Boyce?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Conversation on the motion itself at the board. Seeing none, we will take it to the public for one last opportunity to provide comment on the motion. This is not to re-legislate or to rediscuss, but on the motion, which is to recommend approval of the changes that we have presented tonight. Again, this is the motion to recommend approval to the changes that we have presented tonight. I see no final public coming up. I see no one online, so we will bring it back to the board. And I think it's important to do a roll call on this, please.
Daniel Scher,
Yes.
Zenobia Boyce,
Yes.
Brian Williams,
Brian?
Yes.
Duncan Curry,
Yes.
Robin Boyle,
Yes.
Scott Klein,
Yes.
David Larson.
Yes. 7-0, that is a unanimous motion. Thank you very much. Thank you to the public who has been a part of this process, not only tonight for your comments, as well as through the course of this journey together. I'm sure you will all join us for every planning board meeting moving forward. Always the promoter. So you understand what happens next. We are a recommending body. We have recommended approval. This package goes to the City Commission. They will accept it, which is something they could do perhaps as early as their next meeting. What that simply means is they would accept our filing of it and perhaps set a public hearing. If they do, that would probably be, I'm guessing, Mr. Dupuy, end of September, early October, perhaps?
Yep.
I'm guessing. Please follow the City Commission and the website. And
It's probably carry out from the water outage.
Yes, and if I could just...
okay.
Oh, sure.
All right, we are back. Fortunately, we were able to have that power outage right after we concluded the business of short-term rentals. So,
Yes, yeah. And could I ask,
so I tell you, that could have been a
Laura,
divine,
while you're sitting there, will you make sure the Zoom's still recording? Pretty please.
might have been divine intervention. Say that again.
I'm asking Laura,
Transcriptionist.
because I don't see it recording up above. I guess I could also look.
It says the meeting is being recorded.
Oh, it does?
Yeah. Mine does.
Okay. I think we're good then, guys. Anything else?
All right.
All right.
Thank you, forgive me.
So let's just move on. We're into miscellaneous business. I don't think we have any pre-apps, do we, Mr. Dupuy?
No.
No other communications or project updates? Any questions for staff?
No, I want to draw some very early attention. You'll see it in the future agendas that I have here, that we do have a joint meeting coming up in October. Pretty late October this time around. But I'm going to start preparing for that. If I may just go right to that, Chair Klein, it's kind of the next thing anyways.
Yeah, the upcoming agendas, I mean, August 12th, our next was, August 26th. Does not look like we have much on the agenda at this point.
Doesn't have anything.
Well, that agenda doesn't have anything. September 9th, I don't have anything planned. And September 23rd, I don't have anything planned.
So we have no submittals at this point?
We haven't started any project, no applications. They sure could come in, but as of right now, it's empty.
And just for an update, so the Housel Levine project, the zoning ordinance work, where are they in their process of coming to us with information that we can start digging our teeth into?
Yep. So I will be receiving what they term the preliminary recommendations report. They told me end of this week, early next week. It's going to take a lot of time to review that. It's quite a beast of a document. They will be coming here in person for a planning board meeting review of that document. And they have, constraints with their own schedule. What we're planning is October 14th. It's long enough because I need to get it to you guys well in advance because of how much work it is. But also it's good timing because the joint meeting is shortly after. So this would be a very easy thing to translate straight into a joint meeting. Call it convenient if you'd like. I think it's convenient, but that's the story. Worth noting, we also have a draft version of the sign ordinance that we've been given. We're still working through that one. I know that this body doesn't really deal in signs as much, but it will be a part of the project. So we may start ticking away at that to fill some time, depending.
So at this point, is there any reason to hold the meeting of August 26th?
In my opinion, no.
I mean, could you even notice if you got it? I mean...
For that reason, no. I have a pre-app that's sniffing around. They want to come explore a project with you guys, but I've indicated to them that I'm not quite sure it's worth holding a whole meeting for.
No. Could you have something on the sign ordinance that you want us to look at on the 9th?
It's possible.
And then maybe do the pre-app as well? And
Yeah.
I hate to just sit here and not do anything for,
I think
don't
that's a
wanna-
fine suggestion.
And then if there's anything Housel can give you up front that you want to share with us or anything you want us to look at or comment on, we could just have a study session on the 9th, light one, and then come back on the 14th
Yep.
for, and it still gives us the second meeting in September if
Yeah.
needed for,
Right.
Yep. And then what else I can do, I think I told you last time that we've opened up zoning ordinance office hours in the planning department. I can update, we haven't had any takers yet.
Recording in progress.
So if we have any takers, I can kind of give you any information that I've gotten out of that. There's also some other tools that I'm building that I can update you on. So it could be a good substantive meeting.
okay. Could you please tell us the date of that joint meeting? Do you know it yet?
Yep, that would be October 26th. It's a little later because of Indigenous Peoples' Day. That's on the 12th.
Could you repeat that again, Nick?
October 26th, Monday night, 7 p.m. Likely either at DPS or the library, depending on what space permits.
Yeah, it's 7 o'clock, right?
A little pre-Halloween meeting.
Same place?
DPS?
It'll be either at DPS or the library. We just have
You just don't know
to
yet.
look into space constraints. Yep.
26,
Not at the
14.
community house?
No,
Mr. Chair, as wonderful as that motion was, I don't know.
Don't spoil.
All right, any other business before the board? All right, well, Board, I think we did an excellent job here. A little pat on our own backs. Mr. Dupuy, great work. And thank you for all your efforts. Meeting adjourned.